Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Becoming Without Limits. I'm Destiny, and I am so happy to be here for episode 2. Before I get started, I just wanted to say to everyone thank you who has watched, listened to, shared, commented on, or supported my first episode. Starting a podcast and putting personal parts of my life out there is definitely outside my comfort zone. So seeing people support it and actually hear more of my story means a lot to me. If you listened to my first episode, you got to hear a little bit more about who I am, some of my diagnoses, my relationship, why I decided to start this podcast, and what progress over perfection means to me. But today I want to take you a little bit further back. Today we're talking about growing up nonverbal. Before I get into everything, I want to be completely transparent about something. My childhood memories are pretty blurred. I don't have a lot of clear memories specifically of what it felt like to be nonverbal because I was so young. It's something that I remember absolutely nothing about during that time. I remember things, memories, some of it, they were just scattered. I remember certain names, certain places. I remember certain people. I remember little moments that, for whatever reason, my brain decided to remember that they were important enough to hold on to. But I don't have this perfect timeline where I can tell you exactly what happened, when it happened, or exactly how I felt at that very moment. There's also parts of my childhood that I know about because my family has told me stories about them. So throughout this episode, I'm going to try to make that distinction. Water break. If I remember something, I'll tell you that I remember it. If it's something I've been told, I'll tell you that too. Because I want this podcast to be honest. I don't want to fill in the blanks of my childhood just because I don't remember them. And honestly, the scattered memories are part of my story too. One thing that I remember is sleeping in a room with bunk beds. And keep in mind, I was in DCF, so during that time frame, I only remember that part. I remember also spending time with my daycare teacher, who was a family friend of my mom's, and I would stay with her sometimes. And we're still friends with her to this day. I remember watching lots of SpongeBob, Blue's Clues. I remember laughing at the television. I remember pointing. And those memories might just seem small, but they're important to me because they remind me that even though I wasn't communicating through spoken words the way other children were, I was still experiencing everything around me. I was watching, I was listening, I was laughing, I was reacting, I was communicating. It just didn't necessarily look like the communication everyone expected from me. Something else that I remember that I would talk about is my biological father at the time, even though I wasn't really talking to other people. Looking back at it now, I think that's really interesting. It shows me that communication wasn't necessarily all or nothing for me. There were certain people or situations where I felt more comfortable communicating. And I think that's important to remember because when we talk about nonverbal children, communication can be complicated. It isn't always as simple as someone talks or doesn't talk. Every single story is unique. But there are also little details from my childhood that I know. I don't necessarily have memories attached to them. I remember the name of pets that we had. I remember I had Cheyenne, who was a mini blue-eyed dabbled weenie dog. We had a snake named P, and now I remember his color, which was orange and white. That's what I remember him as a kid. And we had a ferret named Simon. I know who Cheyenne and Pete were, but honestly, I don't have many actual memories with them. Simon is different. I actually have a memory of Simon because he used to steal my Polly Pocket dolls. It's funny because my childhood memories are so scattered, but somehow my ferret stealing my Polly Pocket is one of the things my brain decided to hold on to for some odd reason. Apparently, that was important information. But that's really what my early childhood feels like when I look back at it. I know certain names, people, places, and things that were a part of my life, but I don't necessarily have a clear memory or story to every single one of them attached. There are these random little moments like Simon stealing my toys that I actually remember. So when I say that my childhood is blurred, I don't mean that I remember nothing. I remember pieces. They're just scattered. I've also been told that I was a very bossy but quiet kid. And honestly, that makes me laugh. Because apparently, even though I wasn't saying very much, I still found a way to let everybody know exactly what I wanted. But there's actually something important behind that. Being nonverbal didn't mean I didn't have a personality. I still had opinions, I still had preferences, I still had things that made me happy. I had things that upset me. I had wants. I had needs. I had emotions. I had a personality. I was still me. I just didn't have the spoken language to show everybody everything that was happening inside of me. And then there were stories from my childhood that I don't remember myself. One of the only ones that I think of the stories is I remember DCF coming to our house. Again, I don't personally remember this happening, but it's something I've been told about. And whenever we talk about it now, it's become one of those stories and it brings out chuckles. Some of us, it brings anxiety. Some family members, it brings distraught. But from what I've been told, my older sister was freaking out because a situation happened with either a quad, dirt bike, motorcycle, I don't remember. But my mom was trying to fix it and something clicked and everything went awry at first, but then everything actually ended up being okay. But I don't actually remember experiencing it myself with that dirt bike incident, but I only remember bits and pieces of it. And I think that's something interesting and trying to understand your childhood when you're an adult. Some memories are completely yours. Meanwhile, some pieces of your childhood gives you back through stories to people that were there and that they knew it. I'm okay. I'm admitting that. I'm okay saying I don't remember. And I'd rather be honest about the gaps than try to create memories that weren't there or aren't there. And when I think about those early years, there was a lot of changes happening around me. I was back and forth a lot. By the time I was 7 years old, I've already been through three different schools. When I think about that now as an adult, that's a lot for a kid. Think about everything when it comes to changing schools. Different teachers, different classrooms, different children, different routines, different expectations, different environments. You're constantly having to figure out where you are and what you're supposed to do. And at that same time, I was navigating autism and communication. Looking back, I feel like a lot of things in my life were changing. There was a lot happening. There were also changes happening around me while I was also trying to figure out how to communicate and understand the world. And eventually, I started finding my voice. But I think there's something really important about that part of my story, and that doesn't always get talked about. Finding my voice didn't suddenly make everything easy. I didn't start speaking and suddenly know how to navigate every communication, conversation, or social situation. Learning to speak was one milestone. Learning how to use my voice was another journey entirely. Once I started talking, I had to figure out social situations. I had to learn how the conversations work. I had to learn when it was my turn to speak. I had to learn how to express what I was thinking. I had to figure out how to tell someone something when I needed something. I had to understand other people's communications. I've had to navigate friendships. I had to learn social cues. Even to this day, I still struggle. And sometimes social situations were really challenging, and some of them still are. Sometimes they can be. There's something I really want people to understand about my story. Becoming verbal doesn't mean my autism disappeared. It didn't mean all my challenges were suddenly gone. It meant I gained another way to communicate. And then I had to learn what to do with it. As I've gotten older, my relationships with my voice has completely changed. I've learned how to advocate for myself. I learned how to express myself. I've learned how to tell people when something isn't okay. I've learned to communicate in relationships. I've learned how to speak up when I need help. I've learned how to talk about things that are uncomfortable. I used to be the type of person where if you spoke to me about something uncomfortable, I would I would go quiet. I would not talk at all. It would be scary. But actually, something that happened with my mindset when I think about nonverbal people today. Because I know how meaningful my voice has become to me. I know what it means to finally be able to express something that maybe I couldn't express before. I also know that I was still a person before I had that voice, excuse me. And because of that, when I think about a nonverbal child now, I don't immediately think, when are they going to start talking? I immediately think, how are they communicating right now? What are they telling us? What makes them happy? What makes them uncomfortable? How do they show excitement? How do they show that they're overwhelmed? How do you ask for something? What are they interested in? What are they noticing that maybe we're not noticing? And how can the people around them learn to understand their communication instead of constantly expecting them to communicate like everyone else did? Because communication is so much bigger than words, specifically spoken words. And that's where I talk about some of the myths surrounding nonverbal autism. One of the biggest myths is if someone is nonverbal, they have nothing to say. That's not true. At least that wasn't true with me. I had thoughts, I had emotions, I had preferences, I laughed, I pointed, I reacted to things, I watched what was happening around me. And apparently, I was bossy, so clearly I was finding a way to let people know exactly what I want. Water break. I was communicating. It just didn't always look like spoken language. Another myth is if someone doesn't speak, they don't understand what is happening around them. Somebody's ability to speak automatically tells you how much they understand. Doesn't automatically mean that they how someone's ability to speak doesn't automatically tell you how much they understand. I can only speak from my own experience, but I was still taking in the world around me. I remember watching SpongeBob. I remember watching Blue's Clues. I remember laughing. I remember pointing. I remember people and places. I remember little moments. There was still a little girl inside of that non-verbal child experiencing the world around her. Another myth is if a child is nonverbal, they're never going to speak. This is where I want to be really careful because I don't want anyone listening to my story and thinking that my journey is predicting somebody else's. Every autistic person is different. Every nonverbal person's experience is different. My story is my story. I eventually became verbal. Somebody else's communication journey might look completely different. They might communicate through a device. They might use pictures. They might use gestures. They might use a combination of different communication methods. My eventually becoming verbal doesn't make my way of communication or communicating more valuable than somebody else's. It simply means that's what happened in my life. And now, years later, I'm sitting behind a microphone hosting my own podcast. Sometimes I actually stop and think about that. There was once a little girl who struggled with spoken communication. Now I'm creating Becoming Without Limits and putting my voice out there for anyone to hear. That's pretty crazy. And honestly, it's something I'm proud of. But it also makes me appreciate communication in a different way. Another myth is talking is the only meaningful way to communicate. Let me tell you the blunt truth on that. It's not. Communication can be pointing, gestures, facial expressions, body language, pictures, writing, communication devices, movement, laughter. There are so many ways that someone can tell you something without speaking a single word. Like, for an example, I can do this saying, which means I want water, please. And let me be honest with you guys. And let me tell you something. There are so many ways that somebody can tell you something without speaking a single word. Like what I just do with my sign language. I'm not an expert on it, but I try. And I think sometimes we're focused on teaching somebody's communication the way that we communicate. Sometimes we forget to have them learn how to communicate. And actually, apologies. Let me rephrase this.